The knock came just as the last light of afternoon stretched across the cracked floor, thin and tired, like it too had given up on the day. Armin froze mid-step, a half-folded shirt in his hands, his son asleep on the worn-out couch behind him. No one ever knocked on his door. Not anymore. Not since life had quietly pushed him to the edges of everything that once felt stable. The knock came again, hesitant this time, almost apologetic, and something in it made his chest tighten before he even reached for the handle. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to comment, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Stories, because stories like this remind us what it truly means to be human. When Armin opened the door, the world outside looked harsher than usual. 2 children stood there, a girl no older than 10 clutching the hand of a younger boy whose oversized shirt hung awkwardly from his shoulders. Their faces were dusted with the kind of exhaustion no child should carry, and their eyes held a quiet desperation that said they had already been turned away too many times. The girl spoke softly, her voice barely stronger than the breeze, asking if they could stay just for the night. Armin's instinct was to say no. Not out of cruelty, but because his life had no room left for uncertainty. He barely managed to feed himself and his son, Zion. His small apartment had peeling paint, a single flickering bulb, and one bed that had already seen too many sleepless nights. He hesitated, his hand tightening on the edge of the door. He told him he only had one bed, the words coming out heavier than he intended, as if they carried the weight of every struggle he had endured since his wife passed away. It wasn't just about space. It was about fear. Fear of not having enough. Fear of failing again. Fear of letting someone in only to watch everything fall apart. But the girl didn't argue. She simply nodded, her lips pressing into a thin line, and turned as if she had expected nothing more. The boy looked back once, his small fingers tightening around his sister's hand, and that single glance hit Armin harder than anything else. Something shifted inside him then, something quiet but powerful. Maybe it was a memory of nights when he had held Zion close, wondering how they would survive another day. Maybe it was the echo of his wife's voice, gentle and unwavering, reminding him that kindness was never about convenience. Or maybe it was simply the realization that sometimes the smallest act could change everything. He called out to them before they could walk away, his voice rough but certain, telling them they could come in. The room felt even smaller with their presence, yet strangely fuller. The girl introduced herself as Meher and her brother as Saif, though their voices carried a cautious distance, as if they were afraid this kindness might disappear at any moment. Armin gave them water, watching how carefully they drank, as if even that was something they could lose. Zion stirred on the couch, his eyes blinking open, confusion quickly giving way to curiosity as he noticed the strangers. For a brief moment, Armin worried about how his son would react, but children often understood what adults complicated. Zion simply smiled, a small but genuine gesture that broke the tension in the room. As the evening deepened into night, Armin prepared what little food he had, stretching it in ways he had learned over time. There was something almost sacred about that meal, shared between 4 people who had nothing yet gave what they could. No one spoke much, but silence didn't feel empty. It felt like healing, like the beginning of something fragile but real. When it was time to sleep, Armin spread a thin blanket on the floor for himself, insisting the children take the bed with Zion. He told them it was temporary, just for one night. But even as he said it, he knew something had already changed. Lying on the hard floor, staring at the ceiling, Armin felt a strange sense of peace. It had been a long time since he had allowed himself to care about anything beyond survival. Life had reduced his world to a series of necessary routines, each day blending into the next without hope or expectation. But now, there was something different in the air, something that felt like possibility. It scared him, yet it also gave him a reason to keep going. Morning came with sunlight spilling through the broken curtain, warmer and brighter than usual. The children were already awake, sitting quietly as if unsure whether they still belonged there. Armin noticed how Meher tried to make herself useful, tidying up small things without being asked, while Saif stayed close to her side, his trust fragile but growing. Zion, on the other hand, had already accepted them completely, pulling them into a small world of simple joys. Days turned into something more than just survival. Armin found himself working harder, pushing past exhaustion in ways he hadn't thought possible. He picked up extra shifts, took on small tasks no one else wanted, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, life began to shift. It wasn't easy. There were nights when doubt crept in, when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. But every time he looked at the children, at their quiet resilience, at their growing sense of safety, he found the strength to keep going. What surprised him the most was how much they gave back without even realizing it. Meher's quiet determination, Saif's hesitant laughter, Zion's unfiltered joy. Together, they created something that had been missing from his life for far too long. They brought warmth into a space that had once been filled with grief. They reminded him that family wasn't always something you were born into. Sometimes it was something you chose. There were moments when the past tried to pull him back, when memories of loss and failure whispered that this happiness wouldn't last. But Armin learned to push those thoughts aside, to focus on the present, on the small victories that mattered more than anything else. A shared meal, a moment of laughter, a sense of belonging. One afternoon, as he watched the children playing in the sunlight just outside their door, Armin realized something that changed everything. He was no longer just surviving. He was living, and in helping them, he had unknowingly helped himself. If this story is touching your heart, take a moment to like, comment, and share it with someone who believes in the power of kindness. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Time passed, and life didn't magically become perfect. There were still struggles, still moments of uncertainty, but there was also hope, something that had once felt distant and unreachable. Armin eventually managed to move them into a slightly better place, still modest, but filled with light and laughter. It wasn't the size of the home that mattered, but the love that filled it. And then one quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Armin sat with the children, watching as the day slowly faded into night. He thought back to that moment, the knock on the door, the hesitation, the choice he almost didn't make. It amazed him how something so small could lead to something so profound. Before we reach the end, here's a special request. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and share one act of kindness you've experienced or given. Your story might inspire someone else. In the end, Armin understood that life wasn't about having everything. It was about giving what you could, even when you felt like you had nothing left. Because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness created the biggest changes, not just in others, but in yourself. And as the night settled in, quiet and peaceful, he realized that the bed he once thought wasn't enough had somehow become a foundation of a home filled with love.